Although there are best practices within the chemical industry for the location and design of control rooms, there is no guidance specific to drilling. As a result, the CSB made a recommendation to the American Petroleum Institute to develop guidance addressing the protection of onshore rig workers from fire and explosion hazards in the event of a blowout. The guidance will specifically address the design and location of the driller's cabin and establish minimum required evacuation methods from various locations on the rig. Flow checks are a safety-critical operation used to determine if gas or other formation fluids have entered a well, which could lead to a blowout. Patterson policies required flow checks to be performed at various times during the tripping operation. But the CSB found that of the 27 flow checks that were required by Patterson during the drilling of this well and the previous well, only 2 were performed, and those were inadequate.
There was a culture on this rig that accepted the non-performance of flow checks. Performing flow checks during the tripping operation, as required by Patterson, could have identified that the well was flowing and could have prevented the blowout.
CSB found that the cause of the blowout and rig fire was the failure of both barriers that should have been in place during the operations leading to the blowout. Those 2 barriers were the primary prevention barrier, hydrostatic pressure produced by drilling mud, and the secondary mitigation barrier, human detection of gas entering the well and activation of the blowout preventer. When the well became underbalanced on January 21st, the primary protective barrier was lost, but work was not stopped so that the barrier could be reestablished by increasing the weight of mud, and no analysis on the loss of the barrier was performed.
We learned that Red Mountain had developed what they called a drilling prognosis, which is a type of well plan. But that plan did not specify what barriers were required or how to identify if a barrier was lost. And we found that development of a more comprehensive plan, such as what's known as the Well Construction Interface Document, which is used more widely in offshore drilling, was not required.
In fact, there are minimal federal regulations governing the safety of onshore oil and gas drilling operations. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration's Process Safety Management, or PSM standard, which would require a hazard analysis of the operation, does not apply to drilling. No other OSHA standard specifically covers drilling, and no other federal regulatory body oversees the safety of onshore drilling operations. With no federal safety standards for oil and gas drilling companies are governed by a patchwork of individual state laws. During its investigation, the CSB determined that the laws in Oklahoma, where the incident occurred, are not focused on safety, and instead stress maximizing production and eliminating the loss of hydrocarbons.
The CSB believes more focused and specialized regulatory coverage, like the OSHA PSM standard for the chemical industry, is needed to better control the hazards inherent to drilling. With the requirement for a more effective safety management system, drilling companies can avoid incidents in a proactive manner, protecting both their workers and the environment.
As a result, the CSB made recommendations to OSHA to either apply the PSM standard to drilling of oil and gas wells or develop a new standard with a safety management system framework similar to PSM that applies only to the drilling of onshore oil and gas wells. To prevent similar blowouts, drilling contractors and operators should develop a well construction interface document, bridging the operators and drilling contractors' safety systems and providing a barrier plan, including how to monitor barriers and how to respond if a barrier is compromised. Create procedures for operations, including tripping. Design alarm systems so that only the alarms indicating a condition needing drilling crew attention are active. Regularly perform drills to test drilling crews' abilities to detect and respond to signs of influx, and implement an indicators program to monitor and improve policy implementation rates.
The blowout and massive fire at the Pryor Trust well was completely preventable. We hope our findings and recommendations are used by the drilling industry to promote safer operations so that similar tragic incidents can be prevented.